Hello, everyone. My name is Katrina, and you're back with a Better Day podcast. I am here with Leslie.
Hello, everyone.
Anthony's back there, hiding.
Hello, how y'all doing?
And we have the pleasure, our guest today, his name is Fred, and he is the president of the Broward County Farm Bureau. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, and glad to be here and try and provide any information we can.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about this conversation that we're going to have today. We're going to talk about the pressures that we're experiencing in the agricultural business, some of the some of the relief payments, bird flu that's going on, things that are happening right here in your own backyard, right?
And we definitely have a number of issues throughout the state that have some major effects on not only the people who are producing the food, but in some of the issues with availability of it. And, we've got people who are growers and producers that want to try and provide a quality, safe product to the American consumer. And it gets difficult for them to be able to do this in some cases, and the pressures that are put on them causes a lot of emotional stress.
Right. So I know that a big topic that we have, at least here in South Florida, is our eggs.
Well, eggs are a big topic everywhere right now. And, unfortunately, due to the outbreak of bird flu, that has driven the prices up tremendously based on a supply and demand issue. And if you look at it with some of the things with bird flu, we do not currently have a large outbreak of it in Florida at this point. We did last year.
Okay.
And most of that is now spread around other parts of the country, but it has drastically limited the supply. And the reason for that is, and I'll give you an example with a producer we have here in Broward County that was doing cage-free eggs. She had one bird test positive for avian influenza, bird flu.
Right.
And as a result, all of her birds were destroyed. The government came in, they euthanized her entire flock. She then had to wait through a quarantine period before she could try and restock with new poultry. And as a result of that, that also put a big strain on her emotionally and financially, because she was almost a year with no income from the egg business. And what people also are not looking at here is, if we've got all of these cases of bird flu throughout the country, and we've got extremely large numbers of poultry being destroyed, it's not only going to affect our egg prices, and I don't think you've seen it as much right now, but I think you're going to see the prices of poultry, of chicken in the grocery stores also going up. The prices of chicken breasts, whole chickens, whatever. The meat is going to go up because some of the birds that were no longer of layer age that would normally go into the meat market, as well as birds in the meat market, are having to be destroyed as well. And as an example here, the person who was in Broward County with the flock that had to be destroyed, it was felt that her one bird that got infected basically got infected by either wild ducks or geese that had landed in her yard and spread the disease to her birds. Wow. So, you can't control the wild bird population, and you've got a situation where you can have a wild bird landing in somebody's property where they're raising chickens for eggs, and it can contaminate their entire flock. Because, as I said, it just took one bird testing positive, and then the government destroyed everything.
Wow. And you said the quarantine was a year?
I believe it was about 9-month quarantine before she could start to restock with new birds, with new layers.
And this is one provider.
This was just one
farmer.
One small, and I'm saying small. It was a family farm. This was not corporate farming. This was private ownership, private property. One farm, one small farm.
Okay, so with that, the government, was there relief programs? Is there something she could have applied for? Did she get assistance?
She really didn't get any assistance. And, one of the other problems that some of these things also cause is people who are involved in agricultural production on their land, they get an agricultural classification from the property appraiser, which gives them a lower property tax rate. But in order to have that and keep it, the land has to remain in agricultural use. Now, luckily, we have a property appraiser in Broward County who will work along with people when there's, a disaster situation like this. But some of the other counties, I'm getting reports on situations where, they've gone like a year and a half without having the income from the ag business, and the property appraiser is then taking away that ag classification, meaning they'll have to pay higher taxes on the property. They don't have the income coming in, and it's forcing some of these properties to also end up in a situation where they're being sold for development. If we keep losing our agricultural lands, then the problem there is, where's our food supply going to come from?
Yeah, they're going out of business.
Wow. So I want to make sure that I understood that process correctly when that happened. So one of her birds, or one animal got bird flu.
One animal tested positive for the bird flu.
Okay, and then the government came in and destroyed.
They euthanized all of her birds.
Oh, wow. And then she had no relief from the government.
Nope.
And whether it happened or not, Broward could have come in and took away that, what did you call it?
The agricultural classification for property taxes, making her pay a higher tax rate on the property because it wasn't in agricultural use. Luckily, as I said, we've got a good rapport here in Broward with our property appraiser. He tries to work with our agricultural people to try and help keep whatever ag we have here. But all of the pressures that are on the people in agriculture really put a major emotional stress on them. People in ag do not set prices for what they're selling them for. They are a price taker, not a price maker. So they don't have control on what they're going to be able to sell things for. And one of the things that comes into play there as well is foreign produce getting dumped on the U.S. market at a price below even the cost of harvesting a crop, meaning that year that farmer may not have any income at all.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you said, we were talking about one specific farmer, and that's about the bird flu. But there's so many other factors that create major stressors within that space, the farming space, the agricultural space, as you mentioned before, weather conditions. Sometimes farmers, I heard that they could be spending a lot of money, and because everything goes bad because of the weather, they end up losing everything.
That can happen. You also have situations where there are labor issues, where you don't always have the labor available to harvest your crop when you need to harvest it. some of the immigration issues on migrant labor can cause major problems on availability of a workforce. It's not an easy job to go out there and harvest crops, and a lot of people don't want to do that. And the problem is when you go through some of the immigration labor programs that are set up by the government, with H-2A, for example, you have to put in well in advance how many people you're going to need and when you're going to need them. Well, due to weather conditions, your crops might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks longer before you're going to be able to harvest than what you originally thought. And when you sign up for those programs to bring in that labor, you've got to pay that labor even though you don't have the work for them to do.
So you have to have a feeling for a forecast.
There's so many different issues that cause stress on the people involved in agriculture. And, as I said, they don't set the price. They take whatever the going price is. Then you have a situation like we've had, which is why we've lost a lot of our tomato farmers in Florida, is all of a sudden, when they first passed NAFTA, you had a lot of produce coming in from Mexico that was being dumped on the U.S. market at a price below what even the harvesting cost was on the U.S. product. And as a result, a lot of things ended up in the field unpicked because it was going to cost them more to pick it than what they would even get in return. Now, the other thing you have when you're dealing with some of these issues, you're looking at safety issues. We have very strict laws in the U.S. of what we're allowed to use in the way of fertilizers and other things. There are fertilizers and pesticides that are banned in the U.S. that are still used in Mexico and Central America. And you've got produce that comes in from there, and you don't know what was used on growing that produce. When you see something in the store and it says, and it's coming from a foreign country, and it says USDA inspected, well, that USDA inspection on it is, let's say it's for a number 2 size tomato. That inspection is just to say that tomato is that size. It's not checking it for any kind of potential pesticides or any type of bacteria.
Oh, that's scary.
Wow, that is so important. Wow.
So, there's so many things, as I said, that come into play. And
as a consumer, we're completely, ignorant
Oblivious
about
that
we don't know.
And, Florida, I will say, does have some advantages over other states as far as for the consumer, because Florida does have a country of origin labeling law. When you go into the store in Florida and you buy produce, it is required that it be labeled with the country of origin that it came from. We are the only state in the nation that has that requirement.
Since when?
Oh.
Is it recent or it's been?
It's been for a long time. It's got to be in excess of 12 years or more. Wow. And we tried at one point, Farm Bureau had tried to push for a national country of origin labeling. And there was a lot of pushback from the grocery stores saying it's going to increase their cost by having to label. So
once again, people complain about health issues and so many other issues, but in the end, that's hurting us.
Yeah. I mean, what we produce here is still the safest, most affordable food supply in the world, but if we keep losing our land and keep relying more on foreign product coming in, we've got all kinds of safety issues and everything else. We've got farmers up in North and Central Florida that this past 2 years have been hit with multiple hurricanes. And many of them are still waiting on their first insurance disaster payments. And I've got a lot of people I talk to up in the Panhandle, for example, that are telling me they're not going to be able to hold on because without that insurance payment, they're going to be forced to sell off their land for development.
And not everyone, you were saying, not everyone qualifies for those reliefs.
No, not everybody qualifies for disaster relief. There's a lot of different programs out there, but I'll give you another example. We used to have a coffee grower here in Broward County. He was actually the only commercial coffee grower in the continental United States. It was a company that operated by the name of Wagon Wheel Coffee, and they were producing a all-natural coffee that was very high quality, and he was down in Davie. The gentleman who had the plantation had developed his own growing techniques, fertilizer, etc., that produced a very high yield on a high-quality Arabica coffee. And he was in Seattle, Washington with me attending a American Farm Bureau convention. We had a 3-day freeze back here in Broward. His employees at the plantation failed to implement proper freeze protection, and he lost 3,000 trees. It put him out of business. He could not qualify to buy crop insurance before this happened because he was the only commercial coffee grower in the continental U.S., so they classified him as an experimental crop. As an experimental crop, he could not buy insurance on his crop. Secondly, because of the fact it was an experimental crop, even though we did get a disaster declaration on the area, he did not qualify for the disaster relief either. So he could not qualify for any type of relief programs. There are a number of programs out there that in many cases can help people. Most of those are handled through the USDA Farm Service Agency, who manages the risk management programs and some of the crop insurance programs. But not everybody can qualify.
Wow, I can't imagine the mental health toll that it takes on the small business owners. And for anyone who doesn't know what the Farm Bureau does, Fred, please correct me. I know that you advocate a lot for these small businesses.
Yeah, basically, Farm Bureau, for lack of better terms, think of it as being the Chamber of Commerce of Agriculture. Okay. Our motto is basically, we are the voice of agriculture. Anybody can be a member of Farm Bureau, but we are a agricultural membership organization. We are not in any way part of any government agency. We do not receive any government funding. We operate basically on our membership dues. But what we try and do is we try and help people who are involved in agriculture. We try to provide them with technology that may be available to make their business more profitable. But we also try and educate the general public about agriculture and where their food comes from. We give out 20 mini grants a year for gardens in Broward County schools. And we basically just try to do anything we can to try and help promote agriculture and promote agricultural education. But also in that comes trying to do things to help our agricultural producers and related people deal with mental health issues. And as we've said, there's a lot of issues out there, a lot of problems that create a lot of stress on these people's lives. And when I'm talking in agriculture, I'm talking farm to table. So I'm talking not just the growers and the people that work in the fields picking the crops, but then from there, you've got to go to the distribution, to the truckers that get those products from the farms, from the ports, from the markets, to the grocery stores. And, there's, in today's economy, in trying to make enough money to live on, a lot of these truckers are having to try and find ways to be able to get the amount of hours in to get the crops and the products to the market. And there are regulations that require electronic monitoring on the trucks, that the drivers can only work X number of hours without taking a break. They can only drive X number of hours during the week. And, unfortunately, when you look at, you've got a product that's got to go by truck from here in South Florida, let's say, up to New York. That's a long drive. Right. And, the product has to get there fresh also, because you run into the situation, you get a delivery of produce that comes from here, shows up at the store in New York, they go to unload it up there, the store doesn't like the way the product looks, they might find something that's a little soft or whatever in there, and I've heard of cases where they refuse the entire load. Then you've got a situation, people are not getting paid for it. So you've got all these factors that really increase the mental stress put on these people who are doing what to me is one of the most important jobs we can do, and that's to get a safe, affordable food supply to the U.S. public.
They have all those requirements, is what I'm hearing. The for the drivers, I don't know how long they have to pull over, sleep requirements. Is there any support that is provided for mental health for these drivers?
And that's part of the problem, not just for the drivers, but for agriculture in general. Right. There really has not been a lot of support for programs. This is why right now we're talking with For a Better Day Foundation about trying to develop an agricultural mental health program to be available to these people. It's something that we've seen a need for, and it's being seen throughout the entire country because there are some areas where they're starting to do some mental health awareness programs for people in agriculture. But if you look at some of the facts that have recently been released, agriculture has the highest suicide rate of any occupation in the United States.
Wow.
We experience, and I got to say, I am very fortunate and I feel grateful to you, Fred, and the entire team, because during the pandemic, we united forces and we tested people that they couldn't get tested. We facilitated medical services to bagel aids to the farmers that, and once again, if there was one farmer that was sick, what would it, be in the impact on COVID back then? And we saw firsthand, all the stressors, everything that they were going through to try to get the food to our table during the pandemic, which was back in 2020.
Right, Leslie. What about the isolation from that alone?
Yeah, and that adds to it as well. People needed to, with COVID, people needed to quarantine themselves. Mm-hmm. And I need to really thank you, Leslie, for the fact that we had if you looked at the lines at the government set up COVID testing sites, people could wait 3 hours, 4 hours in line. And when we've got a situation with the farmers, for example, where they've got a farm and they've got all of these farm workers that needed to be tested, by our partnering together and you being able to go out to the farm and test the people there without them having to come into a different location and wait online, that helped relieve a tremendous amount of stress from not just the workers, but also the growers who needed these people there to harvest the crops.
Yes, and back then we were able to identify the huge stressors that they were going through. Imagine somebody being sick. I mean, that's the only job. That's all they know back then. And Belle Glades, where the farms are located, is pretty isolated.
Right. So it's isolated already.
Yeah, it is isolated. But they were super happy, and we were able to at ease their concerns when it comes to COVID, and be able to provide them tools, resources, how to take care of themselves to avoid getting the virus. And everything was based on, anxiety, depression that they were going through. We were able to assist them and at ease their struggles back then. So, and precisely this is why we are here today with Fred. I mean, Fred hasn't even mentioned all the community involvement that and all the support that he provides to the community on different levels. Fred, why don't you tell us and explain to us a little bit? You are Lieutenant Governor at Kiwanis Club, and please, the floor is yours. Share with us all the big hats you wear.
I wouldn't call them big hats, but it's all about giving back to the community and trying to help people. I've been involved with Kiwanis for over 50 years. Kiwanis is a service organization that its purpose is to try and help improve communities one child at a time. We do a tremendous amount with programs for needy and disadvantaged children, homeless children here in Broward. I this year took on serving as Lieutenant Governor for our Kiwanis division, which means I have 13 Kiwanis clubs that I am trying to work with.
That's wonderful.
We have a project coming up called Christmas in July, where we get a listing of all of the homeless students in the Broward school system with their ages, their clothing sizes, and the clubs all work together preparing for a date in July before school starts to provide each of those students with a backpack with new clothes, new shoes, school supplies, toiletry items, and a toy. Now, we recently got the numbers for this year, and there's over 6,000 homeless students in the Broward school system. Wow. So this is a major logistics project to be able to do this. We've got clubs in the division that are doing backpack programs where they're providing food to needy families that might not have food otherwise on the weekends. Pompano Kiwanis does about 32 families every weekend. Oakland Park, I think, is doing about 50. Margate Kiwanis Club, I think, is doing somewhere around 50 or 60 families. And, here you've got organizations made up of people involved in the community that are donating their time and their money to provide these services to needy people in the community. I sit on the board of I think it's about 18 different nonprofits at this point. But to me, it's always been about giving back and trying to help. We've got federal programs that are supposed to be doing things, they don't always do what they're supposed to. You know, if you look at the tremendous amount of money that that the U.S. sends to help people overseas, we really need to be looking at helping our people back home.
That is for sure.
And, you know, that to me, that's a big issue. You know, something else, I'll be up in Washington, D.C. the beginning of April. Farm bill has been a big issue up in Washington. And people don't understand that piece of legislation. They think it's called the Farm Bill and it's all these billions of dollars going to farmers. Well, it's not. It's about 90% of the money allocated in the Farm Bill is what goes to fund the food stamp programs, the feeding programs for needy families, the free breakfasts and lunches in the school systems. That's the majority of the Farm Bill funding. It's only about 10% of that bill that actually goes to support agricultural production. So when people hear Farm Bill and they're thinking, you know, it's helping all these farmers, it's not helping all the farmers. It's helping our citizens. It's helping the people in the U.S. who need that food. You know, we've got food deserts. We've got areas where people don't have access to fresh produce. It's one of the things we've tried to do is help support community gardens to help provide fresh vegetables to areas that people might have a problem otherwise getting them.
Wow, I had no idea that that's where most of those funds went to.
And that's part of the problem. There's a lot of misunderstanding about where these things go. You know, I've been president of Broward County Farm Bureau now for 32 years. And I've made numerous trips up to Tallahassee, to Washington, D.C., to meet with elected officials, to try and get support to help the people. It's not just to help the farmers. It's to help everybody.
Wow, like you said, it's from farm to table.
Yep.
So there's a lot that goes on in between there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and when we look at
know.
some of that trying to deal with some of the mental health issues, you know, hopefully in what we get able to establish, we're going to also be looking at trying to provide services to people who work in restaurants, to people who work in grocery stores. You know, we've got a lot of people out there that are having trouble finding jobs. And when they do find them, the stress they go through, we need to be able to at least say, if you're having a problem, we're here to talk to you. We're here to help you. This is what we need more of. Not go there or go here to try and find help. We need to have programs where we can be the ones that say, we're going to help.
And that's what we're trying to build right now. And we're working together with Katrina, Anthony, the Farm Bureau to create a better day for agriculture.
Yes.
Yep.
So that's a new program that is going to be coming up, and we're going to go over a lot of, struggles, storytelling, breaking that stigma, normalizing conversations about mental health within the community, this community that needs a lot of support, but most importantly, provide that peer support that they need.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes somebody just needs someone to talk to.
Listen. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes somebody just needs a hug.
Right.
True.
And this is something my whole life that I have felt we need to do, is to help people, to be there when there's a problem, to try and help, to provide an ear to listen when they need someone to talk to.
Yes. And this is what we're here for.
Right. So I know that we're going to be working on that program with A Better Day. Are there any mental health resources at the moment?
Farm Bureau has recently kicked off through American Farm Bureau some educational programs on mental health.
Okay.
And this is very recent. I don't have a lot of the details on them.
Okay.
They are, I know, participating in, I believe it's the 988 phone system.
Okay.
And it's something I'm hoping we can make grow and provide those services.
Well, that's wonderful. And if you have any questions or want to reach out to us, you can reach us at Leslie.
954-297-9802 or visit our website at www.forthebetterdayfoundation.org. So we're super excited. I think the program that we're putting together with the Farm Bureau is actually inspired by the Farm State of Mind campaign from the agriculture
Yeah.
department.
Okay.
And is aimed to normalize conversations, educate communities, strengthen the connections about, us, the community, in support of our mental well-being.
Yeah, I appreciate this conversation that you had with us because a lot of our community, we don't know what's going on, as they say, behind the curtains.
We just go to the store and we see
Right.
what happened to the eggs.
Why is my egg so expensive? Well,
And now I know that I'm going to check those labels.
yes, that's so important. I thank you, Fred.
We thank you a lot. One thing
Yeah.
that I like to please ask the audience, support our local business.
Yes,
Support our local business. We're supporting our community, supporting each other.
yes, support each other. Any final words, Fred?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and look forward to our developing a program that can then become a role model for the rest of the country.
Oh, I love that.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for all you do and for all your support.
Please. And thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.